Hi everyone. Thank you for joining our LinkedIn Live today. I'm really excited about this LinkedIn Live in particular because we're going to discuss the question, do mental health tech companies look after their employees' mental health? Um, as a bit of an introduction, I'm Perrin. I'm commercial AD at Storm 3. So we're a health tech specialist recruitment agency with headquarters in London and then also offices across Amsterdam, Dallas, and Singapore. We heavily service the startup and scale up space and have strong relationships with a lot of mental health tech companies. So I feel like this was a long overdue event. This topic is really relevant to any company out there, as the importance of mental health at the workplace has been heightened post COVID. However, it's particularly important for mental health tech companies, many which were born out of the sort of post COVID wellness focused world, to practice what they preach. So we're very lucky to be joined by three leaders in the mental health tech space who can shed some light on how they impact their employees' mental health and the challenges that they face. Any questions that you have throughout, please do put them in the chat and I'll ask them at the end. And we really encourage you to ask anything you want. But first, I'll come to each of you now to introduce yourselves and your business. So I'll come to Adam first. That's okay.
Hi, Perrin. Thank you. My name is Adam Lippin. I'm the founder and CEO of HearMe.app. And HearMe is a peer support platform designed to allow anyone, anytime, for any reason, to reach out via text, download our app, HearMe.app, and get connected with someone who can see them, hear them, and validate them in real time, not give advice, just share their presence and allow them to vent and get things off their chest. So we believe a problem shared is a problem halved. And there's a favorite saying that I have. It's a play on Darwin, survival. And we're not survival of the fittest, but we're the survival of the nurtured. So HearMe, we want to help nurture people, empower people to, and as frictionless as possible, get the support that they need in real time.
Amazing. Thank you, Adam. I'll come to Pilar next.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pilar Cárdenas, and I head growth for Meditopia as Chief Growth Officer. At Meditopia, we believe that mental health is not a trend, and it is a real need and a human need. And we're on a mission to bring peace of mind to everyone in the world. And everyone in the world means for us not only our users, but also our team members and also any employee from the companies we partner with Meditopia for Work. So we're much more than a meditation app. Of course, we have meditations, sleep stories, breathing exercises, and much more. But the real beauty of Meditopia is that we offer all our content in 12 languages. Research has proven that it is more effective when you use your native language. And we do that through a very big network of local experts sitting in every region and country. And that's how we became one of the global mental health apps, the number one globally when it comes to non-English speaking countries. So very happy to be here.
Amazing. And I actually have Meditopia, the app. So before I met you as well. So that's good. And then last but not least, Amanda.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me. What a pleasure it is to be on this panel today. My name is Amanda Conway, and depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here representing Talkspace, which is a comprehensive mental health care solution for employers. And so I have the pleasure of overseeing our direct-to-employer business. So I'm in a unique position here on this panel because not only am I leading a team at a mental health company, but I work with a lot of people, leaders, HR executives through our business partnerships as well. And so we've learned a lot over these last few years of trying to navigate a new world with the pandemic. But mental health continues to be Such an important topic to discuss. There's a lot of attention. There's a lot of resources that have opened up, both with telehealth and in-person mental health services. Our work is far from done. We still need to continue to expand our partnerships, the conversation, reduce stigma, replace any of the barriers to getting the care that's needed. So excited to be on here today and have these active discussions.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's like, yeah, great panel. So I'm really looking forward to this. My first question is, it's pretty like simple question, and it's open to the floor. So it'll be nice for each of you to answer. But how does your business personally impact its employees' mental health? Anyone go for it. It'll be good to know from each of you.
I'll jump
I
in.
can start. Go for it, Adam.
Thank you. I think for mental health, emotional support, wellness platforms, we sort of have a special obligation. I think to sort of make sure our team, our community, our employees are sort of feel part of a mission. I think there's sort of a microaggression, like an aggression if we're not providing as much support as we can, given the mission that we have. Would be a disalignment. So we do a few things at Hear Me. We have remote and flexible schedules. So we have employees from college students through people, upwards of their late 60s, and people are in different life stages. So I think it's really important for us to accommodate different remote and flexible schedules. Our COO, Christy, has 5 kids, 2 under 3, 1 graduating high school, 1 that just got home from college. And you can imagine sort of the need for flexibility there. So we're on a call this morning. She's like, this is happening. My son's graduating, I'll check in later. And we just sort of make sure we care for each other's needs. On that vein, we have a flexible PTO schedule. So essentially unlimited time off, and that people can do whatever they need to do, recharge, refresh, mental health days, et cetera. We think it's really important that we bring our whole selves to the work. And part of doing that is allowing us to refresh and sort of do what we need to do for our family. So that's really important for us. We're really clear about sort of sharing our own stories. So, I have a personal story, which is embedded into sort of the ethos of the company, and we all bring our stories in. And I think because we're such a mission-aligned company, people bring their values. And one of the reasons in the past 2 years, especially, people are really looking for opportunities to work hard and to make an impact. And I think recognizing that is really important. So that's some of what we do.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. I think that some of those points can seem quite simple, but they make such an impact and aren't done in every workplace. Even at Storm 3, we actually every Friday, a few of us will talk about our why we're here, and it's always something that's personal to each of us, and then we know each other's why, which help us kind of all just bond, and we're sort of vulnerable with each other. So it means we've got a good culture, and we're able to keep everyone's kind of mental health as good as it can be. So yeah, thank you for that. Pilar, do you want to go next, as I know you spoke before?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so at Meditopia, for us, it all starts with the culture that we built and encouraging employees to be themselves, especially at work. We actually have this culture, and we protect it a lot. It starts from investing a lot of time in recruiting, and during this process, asking for the true stories, and to really ensure that there's a cultural fit that enables this, way of working and way of talking. And then, we work hard and we have fun. Of course, we wouldn't grow as much as we grew without working hard, but we do it in a way that really has this healthy and non-toxic approach and environment. And by just really putting ourselves and our loved ones first when it's needed. So that would be the core, the culture. And then, of course, something that we've seen working really well is really having this culture of also saying no whenever it is not a priority, or whenever we just don't have the physical time. No, so how to challenge back things, how to push back when it's not the priority, or when you don't have really the physical time. So these 2 things have worked really well for us, and enable us really to have a pretty healthy mental health within our teams.
Amazing. And Amanda, it would be good to hear from you too.
Yes, definitely. I don't know if there's an employer that's not trying to figure this out right now across the entire globe. And being at a mental health company, I think we have a little bit of an advantage there. Because there's still a lot of movement that needs to happen for large institutions and organizations to bring the conversation into the workplace, where you are bringing your full self to work, and our work and personal lives have really blended over the last few years with the pandemic. And so, a couple of steps that we've taken at Talkspace is, as we continue to grow and scale and work hard, of course, there's always hard work at these companies. We remember our foundation and align closely with the mission. And we all have that personal story of why we choose to show up and work for Talkspace, in a society that you can work really anywhere right now, with the Great Resignation, and employees have options, and talented, hardworking individuals really do have choices. And so keeping the mission at the core of what we are doing is so incredibly important, sharing our stories, talking about the why, but then also creating an environment that employees feel comfortable being vulnerable and being open and admitting, hey, today's not my day, I'm struggling with some stuff, and letting them know that you're in a safe place to have that moment to yourself or take a mental health day. And it really starts at the leadership level. You have to practice what you preach. You have to walk the talk, so to speak. Otherwise, it's not really going to make an impact. If you're saying take mental health days when you need it, but you're, as a leader, never taking a mental health day, your employees recognize that, and they're going to model what the leadership team is doing. And so being able to, yourself as a leader, that's important for us at Talkspace. Of, you can't expect your team to take vacations if you're never taking vacations because they're watching. And so that's something that's really important as we continue to grow as a business, is keeping the mission at the forefront and modeling the behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It sounds like for everyone, it's just really about that culture, and culture does come top down because, leaders have to lead by example. So yeah, no, that's really helpful and interesting. I'm sure everyone watching will hopefully kind of resonate with that as well, and think about it a bit at the place that they work too. So the next question, I wanted to come to you, Pilar, with this one. So Meditopia is obviously global, and I know you're a remote first business, so you've got offices and employees all over the globe. How do you ensure that your employees feel interconnected, and thus, their mental health is kept well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, we, as you said, we are a fully remote first company, fully global. We have employees across Europe, Turkey, Brazil, LATAM, North America, Japan, and I can continue. And it really resonated a lot what Amanda said on really this environment of trust and everything. And it actually starts with us on generating and creating an environment of trust within people. That's the way we figure out that makes the real connections happen, even if it's remote. And I'll give you some examples of how do we do on these environment, generating these moments of trust. But a part of having moments within the teams, as you can imagine, where they can connect as happy hours and the incredible work that our managers and people team do. There's two areas that I'm especially very proud of that we are doing at Meditopia, which I've seen before and after change once we do them. So first of all, every month we run, and we will continue to run certain moments, I call it safe spaces, where we decide a topic to share, and then some team members decide to share and talk about these topics, full, vulnerable, and open up. This last month, so actually in May, we've talked about feeling lonely. So team members share, the rest we are hearing, and then we also anyone in the company can connect. And this has unlocked really another level of feeling of belonging to something more than a company, because you finally get to relate with others. And by that, you just make these connections and feel even more happy to be part of that. That will be one of the examples. And the second example, which I also enjoy a lot, is when we have once per month to meet the founder / meet the leader. where teams bring up unprepared questions to the founders and leaders. We choose one founder or leader every month. And then they also show a lot of vulnerability and a lot of really, there are questions that are actually about life more than about the company. So it's really fun, and you just connect a lot with them and also with the rest of the team. That's from one side, sorry. But on the other side, we are a firm believer that it's not only about connecting, but also about finding time to disconnect. And that's where we encourage this connection from our team members and some self-care time. And then a couple of examples that we are doing. On one side is every Monday in the All Hands, right when it finishes, we do a quick meditation hosted by one of our experts, as well as having some silent hours and no meeting days. And then I think we all share this unlimited time off policy, so you can just take a day off for whatever you feel, for yourself, for your loved ones, or anything that you need. So these are things that I've seen personally working really well, and it's made a difference in a remote environment.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think vulnerability seems to be a topic that's probably going to come up quite a lot, and that's something that, like, you know, maybe some of the more like antiquated businesses don't have, because I think just it's a bit old-fashioned, but leaders usually think, oh, you can't show any weakness because vulnerability is seen as weakness, when it's actually
exactly,
you know, the opposite. It's really strong. So you have to be quite brave. I sound like Brené Brown because I definitely listen to a lot of her stuff, but you know, it is true. So yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. So Adam, I want to come to you next with this one, which I think will be a really interesting sort of topic to cover. Because another, you know, important thing that sort of come to the forefront of people's minds in the last couple of years is the importance of nurturing DE&I within a business. So how do you feel DE&I ties into employee well-being?
So yes, vulnerability is our superpower, according to Brené Brown, and Pilar mentioned the word belonging. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? And I'll just share a quick story. So I'm gay, and my first job when I moved to Manhattan out of college was I was a commercial real estate broker, and I liked it. I was really good at it. I was, you know, generating income, but I felt like I couldn't fit into the culture. I felt like culture for me felt exclusionary, not inclusionary. And I couldn't see myself being a part of that. I felt really uncomfortable coming out, and I didn't feel there was a space for me. So I left a really promising career, and I was making money for the company. So diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is really, really critical. So we take a few basic steps. So we partnered with a company. So every marketing piece, every job description, any communication goes through a bias filter. And we get a report, and we make sure that until we're at 100%, we're not sending that communication out. Signaling is really important, and making sure people feel a part of. And I think we do a real disservice, and it's a microaggression if we're not being a part of that. So every job and all of that goes through bias filter. We make sure that we're not only interviewing, but not even, you know, making sure that we're really bringing in a really diverse workforce, even if it takes us longer, costs more money, and it's harder, right? So that's really important. For diversity, equity, inclusion. So baked into Hear Me is the notion of sharing what you're going through with someone who can get you. So you choose based on topic and filter, LGBTQIA, pick an issue, right? And so that way you're matched accordingly with someone who you don't have to code switch with. You don't have to worry about, is this a safe person for me, right? I'm gay. I can talk to any of you about anything, but talking to someone who's also gay, there's a freedom that comes from it. There's a non-code switching. So making sure those opportunities are available for everyone in our company is really important. So that's sort of a thing that we do as well. So D&I, it's really important. And I think culture is a really important word. And I think the problem with cultural fit for many people, as it's been a really exclusionary, right? Because what does that cultural fit mean? How do we find people? Well, people that we went to school with, colleges. I mean, I interviewed a headhunting company, and they were like, well, we only use the top percentage of people from these top schools. And I said, goodbye, right? That's not what you do. So sort of all of what we do is sort of baked into the ethos. It's baked into our leadership team. 3 out of 5 of us are LGBTQIA. And it's just a big part of who we are.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And thank you for sharing your own experiences as well on the topic of being vulnerable. So all kind of like in terms of opening up, but I think it ties in like much more than maybe people think, because I think sometimes in the kind of corporate world, you have like a slot for diversity, equity and inclusion, and then a slot for, employee well-being and things like that, but actually it all ties into like belonging and everything as well. So yeah, I really appreciate you going over that. Amanda, coming to you now, I think, we can see that Talkspace have really scaled, and obviously clients that you work with, I expect there's been businesses that have scaled, really quickly and grown quickly that are your clients too. How do you ensure that you don't lose focus on employee well-being when a company does grow in headcount so quickly?
Yeah, and I've been at Talkspace for over 3 years now, and in those 3 years, we have changed dramatically as a company. When I first started, I think we were 70 employees, and we had a New York City office, and the typical startup ping pong table in the office conference room, and and so there was a lot of control over, back in ancient days when we actually went to an office. There's a lot of control and core around culture and mental health coming from the founders and just the interactions that we had on a daily basis in the office. And fast forward to where we are now, we've 4x'd our business, the number of employees, and we're now a publicly traded company, which comes with a whole host of different regulations and things to live by. And so every year, the people ops and leadership team has the challenge of redefining that culture and making sure that in the new environment, and then on top of that, we went fully remote and, living through a pandemic. There's been a lot, and I've really been impressed with the way that Talkspace has been able to navigate that, because there is no manual for this stuff, right? Everything that we've experienced over the last couple of years and other employers as well, there's no manual. Leaders, HR, people ops, founders, CEOs, they're figuring it out. This is new territory that there's no black and white answers here. But being able to be vulnerable, and I'll use that word since that seems to be the theme today, being vulnerable to trying things, having the conversation, and also being okay with, okay, that one didn't work, let's do something else. Being able to stay connected with your population is what we see as one of the biggest determinations of success in this category. Are you listening to your population? Are you having those conversations with them? It's okay to implement a benefit or program or a new policy and have it not go well. But then what are you doing in response to that to evolve that? And so having that back and forth dialogue as you grow through different stages of a business is really important. And then, what has changed, I would say, from where we were 3 years ago to where we are today at Talkspace is that the pressure or the focus is been disseminated from the co-founders and the leadership to the managers, and so there's multiple layers that we built into scaling our business. And so each team, which is kind of a really interesting thing to see evolve, each team is defining their own culture, in their own ways of supporting mental health. So my business development team looks a lot different than what the product and the tech team is doing, because those populations are a little bit different, right? And so having those mini conversations. So, people ops and HR leaders at our companies, they do a great job to set some guidelines and guide us on here's some things that you can be doing. But then each individual business unit can take that and make it and mold it to what it is that their team needs. And so that's been really interesting to be a part of. And it's fun, we're all just people at the end of the day, getting a paycheck and trying to change the world. And, we have our families and we have hobbies and things like that. And I think if you can distill it down to a simple statement, it's, treating people like people and having that conversation, and then being willing to mold and change as needed.
Yeah, that's such a good point actually, about we are just all people at the end of the day. Like at Storm 3 and our group company, we've grown very quickly, and it's changed. I've been here 14 months. It's changed so much since I joined. But I think something that's been good throughout is that the kind of leadership team tries to listen to everyone, even if you only started 6 months ago, and we'll have sessions where they can kind of just like get everything off their chest, and then that way you can make change. And sometimes you have to be open to kind of hearing constructive criticism bottom up as well, so that then you can change and make sure like everyone can kind of be happy to an extent. So yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And you're right, everyone's just going through it, so kind of all learning as we go, I'm sure. So no, that was really helpful. I think one other kind of point that I wanted to again kind of open to the floor and hopefully just kind of get a bit of a discussion going. Something that Adam, we've spoken about before, the kind of mention of a shift to online mental health care has resulted in the industry maybe becoming quite overcrowded yet underserved at the same time. And I can see that there may be a difference as well in the US market versus Europe. So what is your opinion on this to kind of everyone?
Wow, that's a really big one. So I don't know enough about Europe, and so I'm going to sort of speak to my experience in the US. And I think that, yes, the field is crowded and it's also underserved at the same time. So what Amanda's company Talkspace is doing is incredible, that it's taking friction out of connecting people at a low cost to therapists. And it's really important to do that. And I think that they have been a game changer. I think there's a space and there's a lot of other companies that they're competing with that are in that space. And I think that's led to a little bit of a potential, overworking of therapists. And there's sort of, and I think what there needs to happen is an expansion of different types of services. So I think Talkspace and those companies at the clinical doing a great job. I think there's a lot of people that have subclinical needs that are not being addressed by the sort of in the market today, right now. Mm-hmm. And I think expanding out the provider base to bring in, there's a small-ish percentage of therapists that are non-white in the U.S., right? So there's a culture, there's a mix between who employees are, who younger people are, how they feel about identity, and their sort of all of that, and matching with people who are culturally competent and available for them. So I think there's a lot of space in the mental health market to really take an understanding of matching people based on a shared lived experience, and a sense of like, I can breathe with this person. And also some people, for there's a clinical stigma, even though a lot of amazing work has been done to destigmatize it and to make it more accessible and available, there's still a large percentage of the population that it is stigmatized for. Mm-hmm. So I think making accessibility even more accessibility, more access, and more affordability is really important. And I think that there needs to be a relook sort of the supply of so who are all the suppliers based on sort of what's happened in the past couple of years. A study came out by the government, this was pre-COVID, that in order to address mental health needs, there would need to be 4.5 million new therapists. That's not happening in the immediate future. So what do we do about that, right? So I think it's crowded. A lot of amazing work is happening in clinical. And I think where Hear Me is looking for, and I think where there's a lot of understanding, is that there's subclinical needs. All of us every day have new issues that we might not have thought about. The workplace certainly didn't think about it a couple of years, right? But how do you get through your day? Maybe something's wrong with your boyfriend, your husband, you hate whatever, right? Being able to get off the chest, and not necessarily there's nothing wrong with you, right? We all need therapy. All of us to get something off our chest. So I think there's a space there, and I think the people in the clinical space are doing a great job and will continue to do a great job.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Actually, on what I was thinking about there was, I don't know as much about in the US, but definitely in the UK, even people that might think, oh, I would really love to like go into being a therapist and like, or being a counselor, and you can do you don't always have to have like, you know, a medical degree or something like that. You can be a counselor obviously without that, but it is quite expensive, I think, to become a counselor or a therapist. So the people that do it would have probably had to have like maybe even retired or, you know, made quite a lot of money along the way.
Right.
I don't know what do you
yeah,
think
and
that's the same?
Well, and also quickly, it's like, to your point, it's expensive. So the fact
Yeah.
that it's expensive, it means it's to a degree exclusionary, which means there are a lot of people out there
Yeah.
that can be really available for people which don't have the means to get to that point where they can. So I think there's a lot of work that can happen in that space. And I think that to the DEI belonging, that sort of that deals with a lot of those issues as well. Because if you feel seen, heard, and validated, you feel more relaxed and better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's a bit of a catch-22, because it means that there's people can't really get into, even if they want to and they'd be amazing, they can't really get into being a therapist, because it can be exclusionary because it's expensive to do the training. At the same time, obviously people need to go through training. You can't just have everyone claiming they're a therapist, and it just depends at what level. So I think that's why it's quite interesting with Hear Me, because like you say, if someone just needs a chat, it's almost just like having a friend or somebody there, rather than, doesn't always have to be like a clinical therapist. What do you see in Europe or more globally, Pilar?
Yes. So, I mean, it's clear, as Adam said, there's been an increase in demand, and obviously digital has helped to spread even further, you know, like that. And it's easier for everyone to potentially be closer or start or join a company. But because there's an increase in demand, there's also new companies appearing. For me personally, a good player will elevate the quality in the market, but it is true that there's, as Adam said, a lot of others that maybe, you know, are not maybe serving at the level that the customer should expect, because mental health is very detailed, complex. There's many scenarios, huge level of expertise, from know-how to also like scientific. From our point of view, in reality, like for me, what it is important also to see is how mental health outside of, let's say, as Adam said, the US or English-speaking countries plays. No? So for us, what we're seeing is that when you are a brand that want to launch in let's say, a different market that do not speak English, you'll need either a lot of resources and talent, and you need a demand in the market. So because there's kind of like some barriers to enter, because there's some resources or demand that you need, it is hard to get that many overcrowded market in other countries that are not the US. As well as also we've seen that bigger companies, as we do, for example, when we want to get into a smaller country or another country, we need also a level of focus in order to fulfill like what it really matters and resonates and is important for that specific country. So for this reason, that the barriers of entry for any player are harder in smaller countries, let's say, because of the demand volume and everything. We haven't seen that big of new competitors or new players appearing across the world. Of course, we've seen companies jumping into that, or big companies also opening international markets. But if we focus on Japan, on Brazil, on Latam, the density is much more limited due to that. So that's a bit my 2 cents from a global point of view outside of English-speaking countries.
Yeah, I feel like that, I suppose that again ties back to DE&I, which I didn't actually think we would talk about as much in this, but yeah, that it's so tied in, and often it's easy to just think about kind of the Western world, but like everyone needs some form of like connection and things like that, and it might not always be therapy as we know it, or as like typical therapy. So yeah, no, that really makes a lot of sense. Amanda, I don't know, what are your views on this, I suppose, about the kind of overcrowded yet underserved sort of topic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting segment of the market right now, and I think it's going to continue to be very noisy and crowded. And there's inherent challenges, you know, and Adam articulated this perfectly with really a shortage, or we'll call it a drought, of licensed clinicians in the mental health space, both with therapists and psychiatrists. And so the need to expand services beyond the clinician is spot on. And, I agree with Adam so much on that front, where we can do a better job navigating the options that we have for mental health. And it could be subclinical, it could be clinical, it could be medication management. You have a whole spectrum of mental health needs. There's some really interesting companies that are focusing specifically on the data piece of it. And even tracking, there's another one I saw that's tracks the behavior of how you interact with your phone. And they use machine learning and AI over time, pattern recognition, to start to have some indications when someone might be anxious or depressed or what's going on. So the good news is there's a lot of attention in how do we solve mental health. And there's a lot of companies taking a different approach to it, which is needed. The pandemic has certainly increase the demand for mental health, but I think more so put a spotlight on how the traditional model wasn't really working. So it's really interesting, not from a competitive perspective, but just to kind of see like the creative, innovative ways. And when Talkspace started over 10 years ago, the idea of texting your therapist was not a thing. Our co-founders, they husband and wife, were going through marital issues, and they ended up seeing a marriage counselor and went into therapy, and it really changed the trajectory of their relationship. But through that experience, they were busy executives and they wanted to interact with their therapist in between the in-person sessions. And the therapist was like, that's great, but I don't know how to bill for that. And they're like, what? Light bulb moment, they started Talkspace. But when they were, pitching this idea and getting investment, I'm sure they were laughed out of the room when they said, yeah, we're going to do a texting only therapy experience. And it wasn't recognized as real therapy. Now, fast forward a decade, we've invested a ton into proving the efficacy behind that asynchronous, ongoing therapeutic relationship through asynchronous messaging and live sessions. And it's an accepted form. And so that's one example of how the innovation is allowing us to serve people better. And I think we're just getting started. And so seeing these companies come out and take different approaches and complementary, and I see Hear Me and Talkspace, like that's a great complement to one another, right? And we're going to see more and more of that over the next few years. And we're not done figuring it out. So there's going to be a lot of innovation that comes, and we're here for it.
Yeah, I know. Do you know what? It's so true, because I'm on a lot of calls with clients, and there'll be mental health tech companies. So actually, I hear about all these different businesses that are doing different things in the space. And there's a lot that are around, like you said, like sort of AI and like data, and very focused on like even things like speech patterns and everything like that. But also I think I'm seeing as well more that mental health companies are going even more like specialized or specific. Like they might only be around like work around like eating disorders, or it might only be, which I'm sure you would have heard of, only around certain areas. And I think that's quite interesting too, because it's sort of that might be the way that it goes even more specific into different types of like mental health that people go through. So I really appreciate your kind of views and all of that. And we've got a few questions coming into the chat box, so I'll go to those in a moment. The last thing I wanted to ask all of you was if you could only give one piece of advice to companies, that's any company out there, on looking after their employees' mental health, what would it be? I'll go to you first, Adam.
Is see the whole person and recognize your own humanity. Just take a moment to recognize your own humanity, so then you can see the humanity and the actual person. So sort of take the journey from the head to the heart.
Oh yeah, I love that. Pilar, same question to you.
I would say allow your employees and your team to be themselves. I mean, they will be at their best and they will create impact into their lives, into their culture, into the company culture, and also into the company results.
Yeah. And Amanda?
It's hard to summarize in one, but I would have to say keep an active dialogue with your employees. And that's not only to learn and listen what their needs are at different stages and phases of a company, but even when you do implement a program, a benefit, better access to mental health, keep that dialogue going too. Because what we've seen partnering with employers is that it's not enough to get the policy or get the benefit, but when you implement a benefit like Talkspace, but your CEO never talks about it, or HR leaders aren't bringing that into the conversation, we've seen firsthand that no one knows about the benefit, right? So taking action obviously is important, but I would have to say keep the active dialogue going. And that's where you're going to learn the most from your employees. You're going to get feedback on what's working and what's not. Create that safe space that they feel like they can have that dialogue with you. And then when you do implement change or a new benefit, talk about it and get the word out. Bring the awareness to it.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think like all of that goes back to that kind of vulnerability piece that we've been speaking about the whole time. So that is really, really helpful. I really appreciate all of you joining today and giving, all your insights, and hopefully it was helpful for everyone that's watching. There is one question that's come into the chat. So we've still got sort of 15 minutes or so. And this is from Dr. Robert Matthews. So he said, interesting topics. Thank you all for the insight. I was wondering if anyone on here has interest in a simple to use method to extract objective insight into mental function, like burnout, depression, where we use engineered sounds to elicit specific neural activity that gives insight into neural dysfunction. And that's quite a lot. So I'd love to hear if there is basically any interest around that. That's really interesting, because we were obviously just talking about kind of around the different types of businesses, and I'm assuming this is Dr. Robert's own kind of business. So what are your thoughts on a product like that?
Yeah, I can jump in quickly on that one. I think being able to explore this new technology is something we're actively doing. So directly, yes, absolutely. Interest in exploring any and all innovation, technology, and solutions that it's going to allow us to better serve our people is definitely very much of interest. And I think what we learn or come across in 2 years, we don't even know exists yet, right? And so being able to keep that interest open and having the conversations and the dialogue to how to innovate is very much something of interest.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating for sure. And, I have friends that are in the digital phenotyping business and have sensors that live on your phone and collect all kinds of information and give behavioral modification advice or thoughts to people that have those products. And they're very, very helpful. And it's fascinating. I mean, I personally, at this point, really believe in a human-centric approach is where we can add the most value, and really making sure that we are providers that can be there for people as they can, and meet them where they are, and that helps. So I think mental health crisis, right? Dr. Vivek Murthy stated loneliness is the number one health crisis facing our country, worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day and worse than obesity. So I think at this point, with all of the wonderful AI and things happening, to create a human-centric connection helps deal with some of these underlying issues, which can lead to some more mental health challenges. And I would and I think reframing a little bit mental health to emotional wellness is an interesting topic to sort of bring in, because maybe as we define and think about mental health, we're being a little bit exclusionary towards people. Well, I'm not quite that bad, but there's still a need for some support.
Yeah. honestly, I personally think everyone should just go to therapy, because everyone should talk to people. And sometimes, you can talk to your parents or your friends, or, whoever. You sometimes need somebody that's just kind of separate from that to even give their opinion, or, whatever it is. And it can really reframe your mind for life. So you don't need to have a problem. It's like going to the gym. You can be fit, but you still want to go to the gym because it makes you feel good. So I would kind of give that point. But yeah, I don't think there's any other kind of questions as such. I mean, overall, just thank you so much for joining, all of you, and everyone that sort of listened in and watched this. If anyone does have any questions afterwards, then yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn will be here. I think all three of the panelists, your LinkedIn is sort of open and on there as well. So if there's any questions, something you might not wanted to share publicly, but did want to ask, then do reach out. And yeah, check out Hear Me, Meditopia, and Talkspace, and everything that these guys are doing. This will be like recorded. It saves the recording afterwards. You can access it to rewatch or watch at any point. But yeah, overall, thank you so much. We can wrap up a tiny bit early, but yeah, really appreciate you all joining today.